taking a critical look at the gaming news of the week. This is Augmented Reality, presented by the Triple S League.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Augmented Reality Podcast for March 7th, 2020, Saturday edition of the show. This is the Augmented Reality Podcast, your source for news, leaks, and insights about games and the gaming industry. My name is Ash. I'm here as always with Saib. And I have a notice on my screen right now that my audio from YouTube is saying that the audio bitrate coming through the podcast is 0 kilobits per second. So please let me know if you can actually hear us. That would be a great deal of comfort to know that my voice is actually coming through here. So anyway, welcome to the show today. Some interesting things to talk about. We are going to be talking about Bethesda quite a bit because there was an interview with Pete Hines that has been getting some buzz and some criticism. You can hear me? Good. Okay, awesome. Good. All right. So there's an interview with Pete Hines that's been getting some buzz and some criticism. Plus, there is some leaks about Elder Scrolls 6 and also about Starfield that we're going to dive into. Now, of course, this stuff has not been verified yet.
Far more interesting than the Pete Hines interview.
Well, definitely. Most things are more interesting than discussing Fallout 76, quite frankly. But we're gonna be going into that now. Of course, none of it has been verified yet, so of course you need to take it with a heaping truckload of salt. But we're going to
go through why the information may or may not be true, and base it off of what I've heard, base it off of what I'm aware of, and then because it may not be true, but we're going to go through it because there's a couple parts in it, especially a couple parts that I know to be true, like 100%. But these are also things that you can do reasonably well with guesswork.
Right.
And a lot of these kinds of leaks tend to just be guesswork. And somebody trying to kind of like, go, ooh, hey, look at this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. But a couple other things we're going to get into before that. So definitely smash that like button. And if you are listening live, send us your questions and comments in the live chat. We'll read and respond to as many as we can throughout the podcast. And if you're listening after the fact on one of the audio-only platforms, we're glad you're here as well. It does take us a little bit of time to get the podcast up to the audio platforms. So if you want the latest info sooner, we encourage you to hit the link in the description to find the link in the description to subscribe to the Triple S League YouTube channel. Okay, so a couple other topics we're going to be getting into today. We're going to be talking about GeForce Now and why so many game publishers are pulling out of the service, and also the ones that are not pulling out of the service. But we're going to start by talking about E3. There's some interesting things going on with it. There's a lot of speculation right now that that E3 may be canceled over current health concerns. Now, as of right now, it has not been canceled. It is still going ahead. ESA is still planning to go ahead with E3 2020. However, I mean, a lot can happen between now and the summer when it takes place. But they've had another setback in the fact that the company that was doing the creative direction for the show, I Am 8-Bit, has pulled out and is no longer going to be running the show in terms of sort of how everything is set up and actually running the actual event. So that's another setback for them after Jeff Keighley had announced he would not be returning to E3 this year for the role that he was playing. Plus, we've seen, Sony is of course not planning to participate. And according to this article here I'm reading on VentureBeat, Activision and EA are also not planning to participate in the expo. So, what's happening to E3? I mean, we've talked many times about how it's becoming less and less relevant as time goes on. Are we seeing the beginning of the end for them here, Saib?
Yep. Yeah, no, this is. I mean, they started their own end. Um, E3 is one of these things that it's like, look, it was at one point the highlight of my year. It was at one point the highlight of many people gamers' years. But as a content creator and as a community person, this has gone from like just bad to worse, essentially. And it's their own fault. Supposedly this year they wanted to like turn it into far more of a content creator summit. Trying to actually like push it in the direction of I think the conventions, like that are like far more like, they're all about like who you have at them as far as content creators go than the actual content of the show.
Okay.
But this is like way too.
Okay.
This is
We seem to have lost Saib. Okay, now you're back. We had a bit of a connection hiccup there.
what? Oh, sorry. Yeah. So it's been growing towards its kind of like death for a while, and really this year there's been a lot of stuff that's kind of hitting them. So Jeff Keighley basically said, "No, I'm out." Um, I am 8-bit was like, "No, I'm out." Uh, and this has just been it's been getting worse and worse and worse. Sony has been out for a little while now. The studio, basically, it's so political, and again, not not governmental politics, but like interpersonal politics of like, oh, you're friends with Shelley. Well, don't you know that Shelley's the problem? And and oh, wait a second. Oh, you're with Jimmy. Well, Jimmy is like, he's the go-to person. Is that kind of stuff. And it's just really makes you like sick after like having to deal with this stuff for a while. Um this is the leadership is incredibly, I mean, like, take all of the insufferable, hypocritical, disgusting people that you can from California, and that's what you're dealing with, like, all the time. Um, the show has stopped evolving for quite a while. They've stopped stepping forward and doing things that are unique and interesting. Um, and the general leading team is just kind of bad at what they do, essentially.
Right, and
So yeah,
when they haven't now they have an experienced creative director company that has been doing the show for a while is now pulling out. So I mean they've got to replace that, and it's really So I really feel like this year's show is in trouble. To health concerns aside, and I don't know. I mean, if they did have if they did have to cancel the show due to health concerns, and I mean, the city of Los Angeles declared a state of emergency recently, and the ESA has, of course, they're still planning to go ahead with the show, but they are saying we're monitoring and evaluating the situation daily. I mean, there's always a possibility the show is going to be canceled. Maybe that would be an opportunity for them to regroup and pull something good out for 2021.
Now, one of the things that's been kind of like tossed around is that they may end up killing all non-professionals from showing up there, and then they may end up like basically downscaling the event. So they would have the developers there still, but there would be no public access to the event. So that right away like drops it down quite considerably. Media people, they would basically just say, all right, one person from every, like one or two people from every media company, and then content creators, we're going to let a handful of you guys in. And that way, instead of like having hundreds of people walking through the hallway at a time, they have like 2 people walking through a particular hallway at any given time. So instead of each booth with the game devs talking to literally 1,000 or more people a day, just constantly, just one after the other, after the other, after the other, after the other, they would be talking to like maybe 8 to 10 people a day. That kind of thing. Probably a lot more, like maybe 16, 20. But that's kind of the idea, and that to me makes that makes way more sense. So basically, there's a bunch of people who would basically be streaming it live. There's lots of places that would be showcasing stuff constantly, but it would be far more of an online thing than being an offline thing.
Right, but I mean, if
And
they're
so
going to do that, then it
Mhm.
almost makes more sense for companies to do their own events, their own online streams and stuff from the comfort of their own home bases, basically.
Yeah, and that's ultimately what's potentially going to kill the company.
Like Funky Moyne points out that
kill it.
Nintendo's been ahead of the curve on that one, and there's a lot. Sony seems to have been a little bit ahead of the curve on that one, and then we got all these other companies pulling out now. Yeah, I mean, it may just be moving in that direction in the age of online streaming. Huge events like that may just not be as relevant if you don't have something that brings people to the show floor.
Having an event localized and having the news localized through a particular point in time is still a preferable thing.
Well,
still
it's good
something
for
that you want to
it's
do.
good for people who want to get all of the important info in a compressed period of time. Yeah, I agree. And it's kind of a convenient package for it, but it may no longer be as profitable for the companies, for the publishers. It may not have as much value for them, as opposed to being able to reach out to their own audience directly.
This is where it's kind of like a catch-22. Lots of companies still need the exposure that EA brings to get their games some relevance. So, and the last thing we want to do is just have a handful of publishers and have a handful of companies deciding what will and will not be seen. So that's the tricky point, and that's the point that everyday people out there might have some issues. I really think that E3 is going to be replaced by something else, some other event around the same time. Gamescom seems to be kind of where it's at a little bit more because they managed to do that a little bit better, and it's easier for a lot of people to get to. There's not very many game studios that are actually based out of LA, and everybody hates going to LA because again, it's just stuffy East Coast problems that you.
I apologize for the minor audio issues we're having. We seem to have a little bit of a connection hiccup. Fortunately, it's minor.
It's Discord. Discord's been crap.
Yeah,
lately.
Discord's been kind of ridiculous lately. We don't know what's going on there. By the way, please let us know if you are on our Discord server or if you use Discord in general. Let us know if it's been acting up for you. It's been acting up for us in a bunch of different ways. I've been messaging Saib all week and not getting responses because he hasn't been getting alerts that I've even been sending him DMs. So it's been an interesting week from that perspective, having our main channel of communication interrupted. But anyway, yeah, so E3, we've been talking about it for a while, how it's going downhill, and it looks like it's just received a number of additional blows. We may be seeing the beginning of the end for it here. But speaking of companies pulling out of things, yes, I've been saying that. I've been saying pulling out a lot because we've been talking about NVIDIA and now E3, and there's like, my mind keeps feeling like there's a joke there, but haven't been able to make it land yet. But anyway, more companies and game developers are pulling out of the GeForce Now. GeForce Now, which is NVIDIA's game streaming service. If you're not familiar with it, it is it's different than the format that we got from like Google Stadia, where Google Stadia was trying to be an entire platform. You have to buy the game on the platform, as well as subscribing to the Stadia service, the streaming service. And so, if you own the game elsewhere, your saves are not carried over. You have to buy the game multiple times. There's a whole bunch of reasons why Stadia has not been successful yet. But NVIDIA is different. NVIDIA was basically saying, you own those games on Steam, you can play them on our service, and basically just rent our hardware. So there's a free version, and then there's a version that you pay for, and the free version has some limitations. But if you're paying for NVIDIA's service, you're basically it's kind of a supplementary service on top of owning the games. You don't have to buy them again on NVIDIA's server or service, but you can link it to your Steam account and play your games on their service, except that a whole bunch of publishers are pulling out and saying, no, we don't want our games on it. GeForce Now. And we're just seeing them pull out left and right. So this week we saw The Long Dark. The developers of The Long Dark have said, their game's not going to be on the service, and then 2K Games came along and pulled out. We'd already seen Blizzard and Bethesda pull off the service, but CD Projekt Red is on board. We know Cyberpunk 2077 is going to be available on NVIDIA's service. Also, Epic Games has expressed their support for NVIDIA, saying, Tim Sweeney on Twitter is saying, it's the most developer-friendly and publisher-friendly of the major streaming services with zero tax on game revenue. Now, Sweeney, you got to stop using that word. It's not a tax, okay? It's just not a tax. Look up what that word means. But anyway, I agree with his point here that basically NVIDIA is at basically no cost to developers or publishers. They're saying, you can pay us a little bit extra to have basically access to our hardware and play the games that you already own on our streaming service. So why are so many publishers and developers pulling their games off the service? Or saying, I guess in some cases it's not pulling them off, but just saying, no, we're not putting our stuff on there. Why is this happening, Saib? It's puzzling to me, because on the face of it, it seems like this shouldn't be any additional cost to the developers or publishers. It's basically the person has bought the game, and they can play it on their local machine if they want, or they can, rent some hardware from NVIDIA and have, that better graphical fidelity. So what's going on?
It's just greed, really. It's the only thing that makes sense. It's the only thing that explains why these developers are pulling out. With Stadia came and a whole bunch of these companies with lots and lots of money and said, hey, and we're going to force the players to buy your game twice. That's the best thing about this, is that they're going to buy your game multiple times. And they were all like, greedy money people that are sitting in the back are salivating over this, going, oh my, yes, this is amazing. What a concept. And it's just like, you're just sitting there kind of looking at them like, wow, really? Is that all you care about? Is that all that there is to this? Like, really?
Plus, the logic of it just doesn't make sense, because, why would somebody... This was an anti-selling feature of Google's service, that you have to buy your games again on that platform only. And this is why, a lot of people were saying, who exactly are they trying to sell this to? Your core gamers, they're already going to be owning these games on their own hardware. Like, if I own an Xbox and I have, a game on, if I own a AAA game, why would I pay another, full AAA price to own the game on Stadia? Yeah, there may be a few people that do that, but it's not going to double the sales of your games. Like, how many people own a PlayStation and an Xbox and own the same game on both? Very few people. I know people who have both consoles, but they have some games on one console and some games on the other console. Like, buying a game multiple times, I mean, that's a small percentage of your player base. And I know you've said, like, you've bought Skyrim multiple times, Si, but I mean, I'd say that's still pretty rare. I think most people probably only bought Skyrim once. There's going to be a small percentage of people that buy it multiple times over time. But then we're also talking about a spread of many, many years as people upgrade to different platforms. And there's a whole bunch of factors like that. Just saying, people are going to have to buy your game again. Well, if they're buying it on Stadia, they're probably not buying it for their Xbox. That's my argument to that. And so, why are they turning away from the NVIDIA service when really it's a selling feature to say, oh, wait, I don't have the hardware to play this latest game with great graphics, or I'd have to run it on minimal settings, or maybe I won't be able to run it at all. Oh, wait a minute, I can pay $5 a month, or don't quote me on that price, I don't have it in front of me, but I can pay a little bit of money to play it on NVIDIA? Well, maybe I'll just buy that game now. Like, this is a selling feature for these publishers, so I don't know if there's something I'm missing here. But...
It's because the publishers aren't getting a cut of the pie. Like a big direct cut of the pie. They want what they want is they want Amazon or Google or somebody to say, hey guys, we've got a new streaming service. Here's $10 million. And a guarantee that your game will sell X amount. That's basically what it boils down to. It's just about money, and it's the money guys making this decision. It's the heads of some of these companies going, hang on, we weren't invited to a fancy yacht, where we got to play with a bunch of, young supermodels, and we weren't given briefcases with tens of thousands of dollars. I'm not pointing or accusing any particular game publisher of doing this a lot, but if it were to have happened, or if this particular thing is kind of commonplace, then I'm sure that there's several developers that you could kind of wink and nod at several times to go, oh yeah, you guys, right.
But like Funky Moyne points out here, there is no pie. Like, they want a cut of what pie? Like, NVIDIA's not selling the game.
With Stadia, they said with Stadia, basically, Stadia said, here's millions and millions and millions of dollars, and your game on our system, on our streaming system, will force the players to buy the game yet again, and we're going to give you this monthly cut of however many people are playing your thing, on top of the pre-sign-up bonus. That didn't happen with
NVIDIA, yeah, but NVIDIA. Why can they not see that this is not... That's never going to happen with this service, because, it's not the same thing. It's not a platform. It's literally a hardware rental service, if you want to break it down. There's no pie there. The customer has bought their slice of pie from the game company, from the publisher, in whatever, they buy the game on Steam, or in this case also Epic is now signing on to it. So they bought their slice of pie, and NVIDIA's coming along and saying, hey, would you like to use our fancy new plate? It has, flavor enhancing whatever. And you can just use our plate. You will enjoy your experience even more. And then the pie company's coming along and saying, no, you're selling, you haven't given us a cut of your revenue on this, and therefore you are not allowed to serve our pie on your plate. It's nonsense. I don't understand why they don't see this. Like, it's just doesn't make any sense.
Because they haven't been bribed. And I can't tell you how many times I have seen and how the concept is like, it's like, oh, hey, we're interested in making this new product work, or we're interested in building this thing for you, and the city councilman, mayor, senator, local business leader, whoever it is standing in their way, saying, "Well, I'm sorry, you're not going to get the ability to do this. We're pulling out. We're dismantling your company." Some cases literally, some cases it's just hey, we've cornered all your suppliers and we're making sure that none of them will ever work with you. And like, somebody's just standing there going, what, why, what, like, why are you doing this? And I mean, one of the best examples of this is the DeLorean car company. Like, that guy had people come out of the woodwork and lie about what he was doing, lie about what had happened with his company, lie about literally everything. And why? Because he didn't bribe the right people with the right amount of kickbacks in order to step in and do this. And all these people are standing around going, excuse me, you didn't bribe us. I really feel that that's what's going on here with this. I really feel that they're just sitting around going, excuse me, you didn't invite us out to a fancy yacht where we could, like, do
unspeakable things. Yeah,
unspeakable things with
let's not follow that train of thought. But now Robin says, aren't these streaming services dangerous from a hacking standpoint? And I saw Time Being earlier said something similar about privacy issues. I mean, those kinds of issues would make sense, but that nothing like that is being.
That's not the reason why.
Nothing like that is being stated right now as a reason why it's not happening. It just seems to be them not wanting to, like Saib said, I guess because they're not getting some kind of a kickback, they're saying, no, you can't you can't play the game you bought in the way you want to play it. And so I have to wonder what's next. Like, no, you can't run our game on your hardware, on your PC that you bought, because you've got the wrong brand of motherboard, or the wrong, you're using the wrong brand of mouse or monitor or whatever. You've got the wrong brand of TV you're trying to plug your Xbox into. Like, I feel like that's the next logical step in this progression. Because, brand A, they give us a nice little sack of money, and so we're not letting you play our game that you bought on brand B TVs because they didn't give us that sack of money. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. So I think that's basically what this boils down to.
But we do see some companies, again, we talked about this as another win for CD Projekt Red, is, they are putting Cyberpunk 2077 onto NVIDIA's service. And Epic Games, to their credit, supporting the service as well. We're very critical of what they're doing with their store, but we'll give credit where credit is due, that they're being supportive of the service. Now, of course, it depends on. Again, it comes down to the game publishers and the game, the publishers, developers, whoever's controlling how the game gets out there. So I mean, I don't know if Epic would work out some kind of a deal that says, if your game is on our store, it will be playable on Nvidia. Like if they'll just make that a requirement. I mean, I suppose Steam could do the same thing if they wanted to step up here and say, no, this is good for gamers. This is good for the public to have this option. We're going to make that a requirement. That might, I don't know, that may or may not be a good plan for them from a business standpoint. But the bottom line is, it's, I don't even know what the bottom line is here. Corporate greed again is...
You have some companies that are looking forward to finding the best way to serve their players. This is what CDPR has been doing every step of the way. It's like, what is the best way for us to interact with our players? What is the best way to get our products to our customers? What's the best way to be a good company? And then you've got a bunch of these other companies that are like, what's best for my personal bottom line? I can't tell you how many times that I look at situations and literally roll my eyes, because I know that every decision being made currently in that boardroom at that particular moment is a bunch of people in the boardroom going, what's best for my bottom line? It's how people can fail upward.
Yeah, but how many times has it been proven that doing what's best for your community and your customers is what's best for your bottom line?
It's not, though, when you are a particular person in a particular situation on the board of that company. There are many times where it's preferable to tank a company rather than to see it succeed, because it will personally give you the ability to make people market and make money in personal grief, like in distributing grief to others. There's a lot of people who make a lot of money doing so every single day, and they actively do it. They can, because it's a potential, because it increases their own personal income.
Yeah.
And there's lots of these companies that they have managed to, there's a couple of people at EA and Blizzard over the last few years that made an enormous amount of money just because they sold out their shares and they watched the company, take this massive hit. But they personally, the dude who made the last Battlefield game, right? That absolute gong show of a situation. Dude walked with like a $30 million bonus from Activision from EA. Sorry, wrong company. For basically destroying a game, destroying a studio, taking down several other people. Yet he himself made an enormous amount of money because of it. And he may not have been able to make that money if he had made just a good product. Like that's the thing, is that he can fail upward, make an enormous amount of money because he failed, and then sit there and go, well, personally I profited. Cui bono
that's pretty,
is...
Yeah, that's pretty disgusting.
Yeah, cui bono is one of the greatest lines of dialogue ever, because it gets you to ask the most basic question: who profits? Who profits from what is currently going on? And if you're doing investigations, if you're trying to find out what's going on, this is quite possibly one of the best things that you can do. One of the best ways that you can approach everything that you do, everything that you encounter, constantly asking yourself who profits from this situation. And in a lot of cases, who's profiting from these situations? Board members, executives, company owners, the investors. They are the ones who are directly profiting from them walking their companies and walking their games off of this platform, and banning you from being able to play the game that you own on a rented PC. You are renting a PC because yours died, and they're telling you, "Excuse me, no." And you're like, "Why? It's my game. I bought it." Oh, no, 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 no. You bought the right for us to allow you to we want you to play it on whatever we want you to play it on. You don't have the right to play what you bought on whatever system that you want to buy.
Right.
I suspect that there will come a day where people, rig up a system to play a game, on an offline game in the comfort of their own home, and somebody will, burst down the door, with FBI and go, "You're under arrest for playing video games on your own custom system." I suspect that this will be a thing. If we stay on this course, that this will be an event that happens somewhere in the future. That, excuse me, you're not allowed to play that game on a piece of hardware that is not licensed to play that game. And it is equivalent to, basically ripping DVDs or movies or whatever and selling bootleg copies. That's how that will be viewed by the courts, because you were bootlegging, you were stealing from the developers.
Except there's a legal distinction between, like, I doubt that the courts, unless they, maybe courts can be corrupt too, but unless they're on the take or something, I don't think they would see it that way, because they would see I think your average judge would see the difference between ripping a DVD to sell it and, just playing the DVD on, a homemade DVD player that you made. There's a huge legal distinction there. Anyway, we're going to move on here. You are listening to the Augmented Reality Podcast, and we love seeing everybody so active in the live chat. Great discussion happening there. If you want to keep the conversation going after the live broadcast, we welcome you to join our Discord community. You can find the link in the description below. It's a place where you can talk to us and other Triple S community members about all the things we love to talk about. Stay up to date about everything we're doing here at the Triple S League. Click the link below to join. Be sure to say hi to us in the welcome channel. People in the chat pointing out that the whole, customer is always right, and long-term focus is an outdated philosophy. Unfortunately, that's true, but it held up for a long time, and I hope it makes a comeback when people realize, well, there's more profitability in being, sustaining good customer relations long term. That's my hope. Am I being too optimistic? Possibly. But anyway, let's move on to talking about the Bethesda stuff. So let's talk about this Pete Hines interview first, and then we'll get into the leaks about Elder Scrolls 6 and Starfield. So Pete Hines, he was on an interview with, who was it again?
Mr. Camping is a Legitimate Strategy.
Mr.
Greg Miller.
Greg Miller, okay. So, so he was on this interview. He's done a couple of interviews recently, but this is the one that's been getting a lot of attention because he was addressing some issues with Fallout.
Or as some people call him, that camping B-word.
Yeah. So, Pete Hines was on with him and was giving was answering some questions and giving some responses to the whole Fallout 76 fiasco. And this is not, I mean, there's a number of issues to tackle here, because it's been, on the one hand, some of what he was saying, it's been getting a lot of criticism for being almost kind of defending the indefensible, but also being a little condescending toward their customers, and toward, in particular, toward people who are critical of the game. And Pete said some things like, basically, well, people will say anything to get clicks, almost brushing off the criticisms from YouTubers and other content creators as, well, if they're just saying that to get clicks, kind of a thing. And I really didn't. That doesn't seem like a very enlightened way to look at it. But Saib, you had some other thoughts about all of this, and some of that includes the fact that Pete Hines did disappear for quite a while from Twitter. He was apparently still lurking and reading feedback, but not responding to anything because he was getting all kinds of backlash, much of which was overboard, and much of it was not deserved. And especially when you get into talking about threats and things like that, there was a lot of backlash against him personally that was not deserved. But I think there are, in my opinion, there are some criticisms that can be leveled directly at Pete Hines. But you were saying, Saib, that you feel like this it may be going too far. He's kind of a figurehead. And
this whole situation with 76, with the studio, with everything, it's like it's so frustrating. Couple of big things for people to remember. The Maryland studio, where Todd and Pete Hines mainly work out of, are essentially figureheads for an institution that they do not have that much power over. Pete Hines can't call up the boss and be like, we need to take microtransactions out of this game. If he were to say that, he would be told to sit down and shut up. That's not his place. His place is to go out there and read from the paper, you stupid little monkey. Get out there and read what we tell you to read. Don't come in here and tell us any of your stupid opinions, because I don't care. That's what his boss, who is also the boss of Todd Howard, and would say. It's like, I don't care. This is a man who basically stole the company from a dude who actually was the more, like, they were co-founders, and one of them forced out the other founder. One of them has been intending to sell this company for a very long time, wants it to go public, wants to make an enormous amount of money, wants to quadruple or quintuple his investment, and then walk off into the sunset. And in order to do so, he believed a whole bunch of garbage from a whole bunch of people. An enormous amount of people said, hey, just so you know, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to do this, and that's how it's going to work. And it's like, wow. Okay. Can we offer some advice? No. Get out there and tell the message that you want to tell. And for this annoying, difficult thing, Pete Hines has been vilified, has received death threats daily, has been insulted with every constant insult. And this is what he's pushing back against. He's not pushing back against the people who have legitimate criticisms. They're not. The fact that Greg started out the interview with, well, you guys said that you were, wanting to protect single-player games, and then you just released a whole bunch of multiplayer games. Don't you think that's hypocritical?
So it was kind of adversarial from the start.
Well, no. This is what the subtext was. Miller is not a direct confrontational person, but he is going to poke the bear.
Right.
And the subtext of that question of, well, you guys had this person come out, made this video, and you guys said, save single player games. But then you guys made, 76 and a bunch of other online stuff. And Pete is sitting there going, have you not played, or are you not aware that we have two of the biggest RPG single player games coming out in a matter of, like, one of them's coming out in this year, and the other one's coming out like a couple of years from now. This is what I told you in the green room just before this. So it's like, and there's lots of people who forget those kinds of things, who go, you know what, that doesn't really count. Like, what doesn't really count? Well, the fact that they're working on this other stuff. It's like, how does that not count? Because I don't want it to count right now. That's the thing. So again,
That's
I understand.
one criticism that I've never understood is, I mean, yeah, okay, they made a multiplayer game, doesn't mean they're not making more single player. Like,
Yeah.
and people have been
Which we're gonna
asking
get
for
into
Fallout
this week.
and like Fallout and Skyrim multiplayer. People have been asking for that. They weren't asking for it necessarily
The
in
way
the form
that
that
they
they
got
delivered
it,
it,
yeah.
but people have been wanting to play this game with their friends, and so it was natural for them to look in that direction, like the whole, the spirit behind it of, let's make a multiplayer Fallout experience. Nothing wrong with that.
The other thing is this, the other biggest thing that I dislike about the feedback is that the server rentals are $100 a year, and um, again, I don't want to be insensitive to people who are upset about the 76 thing. I'm upset about the 76 thing. I'm upset about the current state of the server rentals. All of that. I understand that. I get it. But that is not above industry standard. That is the industry standard for renting servers. Yes, it's not said specifically as a server rental. Yes, it's not really communicated that way. And again, the communication on this has just been terrible. But again, they are given a piece of paper with the talking points that they need to hit, and they can't stray from those talking points. If they did, and if Pete Hines made a habit of sidestepping that stuff, he would be fired. So there's no grand conspiracy here. The truth of the matter is that $100 for a server rental is industry standard, and some people seem to not understand that this is how server rentals work. It runs you anywhere between 80 to 200, $120 a year, and theirs is smack dab in the middle of that price point. So again, it's a server rental. You get a whole bunch of other goodies with it, and it's called a subscription service. Really bad marketing on that, but it is still 100% accurate to say that what they have for that price is perfectly fair.
I suppose, I mean, yeah, what you're saying makes sense. I think that if it was like if the game was a complete experience that wasn't a buggy mess and being,
Well,
like, there's all kinds of problems.
Right now, I wouldn't. Again, I can't say this enough. I understand that some people are really, 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 really annoyed with this. I am very annoyed that the server rental doesn't allow me to increase the player cap to 50. Because
that's the thing. It's like, okay, server rental.
The other thing that is into industry standard is that you typically can have between 50, or you typically have between 100 and 24 people on these servers at a time. And on Bethesda's one, you get 8.
Yes, so it's the
So
price
again,
you pay for a server rental, it depends on what kind of features you're getting with that affects the value of it. And so they, there's some cosmetics you can unlock and that kind of thing, but I mean, is that really adding the value that Yeah, $100 a year for an 8-player server.
Yeah, that's
Pretty
the
darn
thing that
high.
I disagree with that. But again, the server rental cost is the same. If you want to rent a Conan server, $100 a year. If you want to rent an Arc server, $100 a
Yeah, but
year.
you
If you
can't
want to rent a
discount.
Minecraft
Like,
server,
it's not a server. It's
$100
not
a
a
year.
server as a server as a server. That's like saying, okay, renting a bus is the same cost as renting like a little 4-seater sedan. Like, people would look at that and say, well, that's ridiculous.
Well, other people would look at that and say, I wouldn't need to rent a vehicle, $100 a month or
I
whatever.
Who would look at it like that? Like,
I do.
well, that's not.
I've gone on lots of trips where I'm like I need to rent a car, and I'm like I want this kind of a car, and I show up and they're like, oh, we didn't have any of those kinds of cars, so you're getting this kind of a car for the same price, and
Well,
it's a
yeah,
much nicer car.
an upgrade for the same price is sure, that makes sense, but no one's going to say, okay, we didn't have any buses available, so we're going to rent you like a little sedan for the same price as the bus. Like, nobody's going to go for that.
Except the people who, yeah, I don't think this is working. Let's
Well,
move
anyway,
away from
I'm
the
just saying
car
that plays into people's
it's not a
perceptions of the
it's
value,
not a
right?
comparable thing. So okay, it's what's one of the other things? So multiplayer, right? So we mentioned multiplayer and especially PvP. So this is something that they kind of were hit on, and a lot of people were kind of hit on, and a lot of people are giving them crap for is like, well, didn't you know that people weren't interested in PvP? Um, Again, I understand that. A lot of players understand that. A lot of people who understand Fallout understand that. However, the argument being used of "duh, totally stupid. Why didn't you know this?" is listened to a YouTuber last night who just raked them over the coals for daring to put PvP in a Fallout game. Um, Again, the average player doesn't know this. The average Fallout player doesn't even know this. A YouTuber who's supposedly a smart person should have the basic ability to look this stuff up on the internet. It's not hard. The original multiplayer online Fallout was a PvP hailstorm, I think is the correct. It was PvP in your face, unrelenting 24/7. You're going, wait, what? What Fallout thing? What are you talking about? What past Fallout game was online that was PvP based? Fallout had a PvP multiplayer mod that ran for years. I think it's still running. It was created by the community, and it was a hardcore community fan thing before Fallout 3 was basically a thing. You were in a world where you didn't have privacy. Other players could find you on the map and kill you whenever they wanted to. You had to join a clan. You had to have people defend that base like 24/7 where all of your nice stuff was, because there wasn't the ability to like create turrets and stuff that differentiated players. So this was a game that you had literally a dude standing guard over the entrance 24/7. So people would take shifts to stand guard at the door so that if somebody started to try and like, fiddle with a lock to unlock it, that you could shoot back and prevent them from running into your base and taking all of the stuff that you had made. It was basically Ark on acid. So yes, the foundation of online multiplayer Fallout is in fact PvP. I don't like that, and I never enjoyed that game. But that's the truth of where it is. This also comes at a time where Fortnite came out with a save the world, play together with your friends, build stuff, and fight against zombies. Okay? That game came out and it failed. It almost was destroyed. And it was saved by a battle royale situation. So again, they made a correct choice based off of empirical fact. Fact number one has there been a multiplayer PvP or multiplayer Fallout game? Was it PvP or was it PvE? It was PvP. Okay, so if it's PvP, then maybe we should go with that because that's clearly what people are interested in. When was the last time that a big titled PvE game came out? Just came out. How did it do? It basically failed. All right. Did it find success after it became a PvP game? Yes. It's now the number one game in the world. That's the world that they launched Fallout 76 into.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. It's
again,
not a bad thing at all that they explored the PvP thing, in my opinion. I actually enjoyed that. It was
So again, the normal player doesn't know this stuff. But a YouTuber whose job it is to report on the facts and understand the nuances behind what they're talking about needs to have at least had a cursory ability to look up in and learn that yes, in fact, there has been a PvP multiplayer Fallout experience, and it was the cornerstone of the Fallout Online community for a very long time. That has only been replaced as far as like fan numbers goes once Fallout 3 and 4 came around. Once Fallout 3 and 4 came around, the hardcore Fallout base, was replaced by a bunch of people who've never even played Fallout 1 and 2. So how do you think that fan base feels, right? Because they had a particular thing and it was completely upended and removed and changed into something else, which is arguably a very good experience. But the minute that Bethesda tries to do something that is somewhat sort of kind of like that, they end up getting crapped on for that. Again, I looked at the experience and I said, I don't think PvP is necessary for this game. And I would have told them and encouraged them if they had asked to avoid that concept of the PvP and to really focus on PvE because that's the type of players that the game is currently attracting. And that you need to create really good lore-based character, NPC interactions, quests, stuff like that. That's what you need to really focus on. And that should be the cornerstone of your experience because that's where people really like this, what you've done, which is something that you did well. Is you created an interesting world with interesting NPCs and interesting stories. And yeah, their lore was a little messed up here and there, but that's why people play it. Is for the characters, and they just strip that out like idiots because again, they didn't understand it. But to say that it was never a part of the system or that it was a completely bad move because it's like again, as players, you can say that and that's a valid opinion. But as a YouTuber or as a content creator who claims to know stuff about the community, this is something that you kind of have to give them a pass on. And say that, well, now that they've understood that that's the issue, we understand now with this new expansion that they've moved back towards that. So give them some credit for that at the very least. But a lot of YouTubers just are refusing to give them credit for that. So I'm willing to give them credit for understanding that they screwed up as far as the general direction goes. The running of the system is completely different, right? That's the hardware, not the hardware, the server status, the technical problems. That's a different can of worms completely, and you have to kind of approach this thing multi-layered in order to like give an accurate look at the situation as a whole. So yeah, of course it's not my preferred choice, right? But it's also not the end of days that some people are saying. Yeah.
All right. Let's move on here to talking about.
I was asking a question, I think we are, because we approach things from a a balanced perspective of trying to find out the facts and then reporting the facts while understanding the emotions and the feelings of the of John Q. Public. Right. This was a great line back in the 50s, in the 40s. Sir, I need to find out the facts because I am a journalist and John Q. Public has a right to know. That was a thing back in the 50s, 40s, and 60s, 50s and 60s. That I mean, that's what hard hitting real journalism was built on. And then they built that up, and in the last like 30 years, they've basically taken that thing and flown it into the side of a mountain. It's it's kind of a disgrace. So yeah, I think that overall, like, I'm not saying that I'm always right on my opinions, but when it's a messy situation, and it's really a no-win situation. The fans haven't really won. Bethesda certainly hasn't won, and the journalists that make constant hit pieces, and this was another point that Pete was bringing up, the journalists who make, or the YouTubers or the content creators who make hit pieces on them, one after the other, after the other, after the other, after the other, after the other. You know, and for some of them, I get it. It's like all of the hate that they got last year was totally acceptable. But there has been some people who have done a video that's just it's just a video full of swear words of them saying how garbage Bethesda is over and over and over. They're literally, I watched a video where the dude quoted
Okay.
line. And
sorry, we
you
cut out there for about 4 or 5 seconds, and sorry again about the audio issues.
So annoying.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's happening. We haven't had this happen in a long time, so we will.
Well, Discord's reading green this whole time. 60 ms.
Yeah, it's annoying. It just, these issues will randomly happen. I mean, it's the unfortunate reality of doing a live show sometimes.
Yeah.
Anyway, that said, we'll work on. We'll make sure that. Well, we'll do our best to make sure that that's fixed for future shows. Thankfully, it's not been too bad, but that was a particularly long cutout there.
So, I mean, basically, like,
I think you've covered it. I think you've covered it. It's there is some frustration on Bethesda's side. There's some frustration on Pete Hines' side that is definitely justified.
So, I mean, not to mention again, or to reiterate that Pete Hines has received constant hate comments. They've received constant death threats on a daily basis for the last like year and a half. For again, and as I have to reiterate this once again, the Maryland Bethesda studio with Pete and Todd basically had nothing to do with this game. This was a new investor rolled in, said he wanted to basically do this. They had been throwing around the idea. They were on the project for about 4 months, grand total. They fixed the Atlas problem. Then they handed it off to another studio and said, here's some stuff, run with it, go. And as Todd was playing the game in his free time, he started to realize that, wow, this is really buggy. Wait, they're shipping this next month? What? Or in 3 months? What? Okay, guys, this is really buggy. And they kept coming out and saying this over and over and over again. And the other studio, with the boss, who was their boss, kept saying, don't you worry about it, because this isn't even the buggiest thing that we've released. Which, again, is totally fine. It's like one of these situations. I was trying to think about it. To give it a perspective, it's like having a sibling who or a toddler who likes to throw their food at you, and the first time you do it, everybody laughs. It's hilarious. Everybody's sitting there laughing, and then the food starts getting thrown back and forth, and everybody's laughing at how the mashed potatoes are ending up on the floor, and it's just a great old oh my god, this is so funny. kids are having just they're dying laughing. It's great. This happens, a month or two later, right? And then it happens a month or two later again. And then it happens a month or two later again. And each time it's great. And then the kid throws the food one day, and his mother turns around and belts him across the face. That's what happened with 76. They make fun of how buggy their games are. It's a meme that they actively participated in. And then they released a game, and the community walked up and slapped them in the face.
Except that there was way more to it than just the bugs.
I understand there was way more to it, but you have to, you have to understand the nuance of the situation. This isn't even the buggiest game that they have released.
Yeah, I get that.
There are way more buggier releases that they released, and everybody is like, well, yeah, of course it's a buggy mess. It's Bethesda. Is it a bug or a feature? Dun, 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 dun. But then suddenly it goes from like, hey, we're all having fun here and we're all laughing because it's a buggy game and you guys get around to fixing it. That's fine. That's fine to slap them in the face. How dare you? It's like,
Yeah, but the thing is, if they think that bugs were the only problem, then I feel like they're not paying attention.
I understand that there was more issues going on than just that. There was the whole canvas bag thing. There was the whole moldy helmet, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
Again, I understand, but this is stuff that I mean, you think Todd Howard had something to do with the canvas bag thing? No, some dude in marketing.
No. And I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying as a company, like you're saying, okay, it's like that. They released a buggy game, and suddenly people weren't happy with them releasing a buggy game. But there was way more to it than just it being a buggy game, and you get that. But I mean, if they're reacting to it like, why are people suddenly not okay with us releasing a buggy game? Well, there was way more to it, and either people got fed up with it.
Yeah.
I mean, it hit that critical mass where they're like, okay, seriously, it's time for you to grow. It was like, yeah, I think Funky Moyne said, nice analogy, Saib. You're saying that they behave like a toddler. Exactly. But it's like they're a 10-year-old now who's throwing the potatoes on the floor.
Well, I don't think that's an apt thing. But it's like we all knew that this was part of the DNA of the studio. And it was... And again, there's a comment here that I want to... Somnolence doesn't buy Todd Howard's defense. The entire studio has rotted. Well, you need to wait until you play the next actual Bethesda Maryland studio game. What you're saying is understandable when it comes to Wolfenstein and 76, but both Wolfenstein and 76 are not their main studio. The other biggest main studio is going to be the one that's working on the Doom game. So you need to give Doom a shot and then make your judgment based off of that. Then you need to give and again, you don't have to buy it day one. You just have to look at it and see whether it's a good experience or not. And if it sticks to the original principle. People have been giving Bethesda crap for that stupid commercial that they put out with the rapper and that, and yeah, it didn't really make a lot of sense and it was kind of weird. But it's a commercial. To me, I don't get that at all. It's a commercial from a dude who really likes Doom and who basically gave them a sweetheart deal in advertising it, and was like, hey, and they're trying to reach I don't believe that it's okay. This is so weird that I have to say this. If I'm sitting down in a modern advertising room and pitching the concept of we need to put music with a commercial, we can either do heavy metal or rap music. And why people are saying, I can't believe that you went with rap music over heavy metal. Don't you understand that heavy metal is what's associated with this title? It's yeah, it's what's associated with the title. But do you know how many people actively like listening to heavy metal music? It's not that many. Not when you're comparing it to rap or hip hop.
Yeah, I feel like we're getting off into the reeds here. I think we should pull it back, and we've got to get onto these leaks before we run out of time here. But anyway, fair enough. I think points been made. I agree with a lot of what you said. I disagree with a few points. I imagine there's a lot of different opinions, but we do need to move on.
Oh yeah,
here.
no, and again, I don't want to like downplay anybody's personal experience that they had with 76. It was a train wreck, you know, and still is essentially a train wreck. And we've heard really good things about this new patch, and there's lots of people who won't give them the time of day, and that is completely justified. If you have no interest in playing the new patch, and giving 76 a second go, totally 100% agree. You have that right, but you should not continue to hit on them. Just like it's like if you were to hit on darn, what's that stupid game called, the No Man's Sky. You can't hit on No Man's Sky and say that it's currently a bad game, because by every person giving it an honest go again have said that it's a far superior game. So yeah, you have to like realize that at some point you like, if this new update fixes or is potentially a huge fix to the game, great.
Yeah.
If it's not,
Yeah.
then it's, you know, we have to kind of go from there. So
Funky Moyne really wants us to talk about the comparison with Horizon Zero Dawn that Pete Hines made. Just briefly, it wasn't a good comparison. It really wasn't.
Not really. No, it was kind of like it was a. I see where he kind of was taking that, but I don't think
like
it was
his
a
point
good
about
idea.
trying new things, and that can be great. Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes you want
That's
to take
a
a
valid
risk in
point,
trying
and
new things.
Yeah,
But
and
they,
I mean, this is something that somebody like theory tested in the boardroom, and it makes sense in the boardroom, but it didn't translate to making sense when they actually came out with it. So yeah, I totally get that. So
all right. So let's get on to talking about the future of Bethesda. So there was a rather lengthy post that was released on Reddit a couple of days ago by by Reddit user Todd is my mom, and heaping bowl of salt time. Not like annoyed salt, but like take it with, take it with some skepticism. Oftentimes, some of these Reddit leaks turn out to be very, very accurate and true. Sometimes they don't. Now, this one has more of the earmarks of sounding rather fairly credible, but again, I mean, it's impossible to know for sure. But we're going to talk about a little bit of this. We're going to talk about how some of these things line up with things that that you know about the game. And do sound like they're accurate, but as you said at the beginning of the podcast, some of it could be really good guesswork or just, critically analyzing things. So let's dive into some of these points here. And then at the end of the post, there's some stuff about Starfield that we can talk about as well. So the poster does not reveal exactly where he works or who he or she, I suppose, might know.
There's a fair amount of misdirection in the lead up, and we're not going to get into that particularly because it's like this is like kind of trade secret stuff, and it's kind of like going off into the weeds, but yeah, there was a lot of misdirection in here, like a lot of like, ooh, look at my right hand while my left hand is talking, kind of thing. And he's doing that to protect himself, obviously, right? So yeah, that's totally fine, and something he's got to do. So yeah, but yeah, essentially this is the post is really, really, really interesting. for a number of reasons. But yeah, that whole like him protecting his identity thing, it kind of lends a little bit because he's doing this really, really well with the whole misdirection thing, which, and I need to point this out, is not a sign that it's necessarily accurate. Because it's like a lot of leakers don't know how to do this that well, and he knows how to do this really well. So it could be that he's just really good at creating fake leaks.
Right.
Because this is a this is the way I would go if I wanted to create a fake leak, but this is also the way that a real leaker would also post info.
Right. So again,
So
take it with some skepticism, but we're gonna go through and see what this has to say. Again, this is speculation and rumors time.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So the poster says, most of you have guessed right. It takes place in High Rock and Hammerfell, which you had, I believe you hit that one on the head back when the first teaser of it just first came out.
It's something that we've been hearing for a while. It was inside rumors constantly going around, and when they put out the teaser, basically everybody looked at that teaser and was able to like take current landmass mapping of the world, and this is something that this is something that Bethesda doesn't really do. They don't they kind of like they've created a more or less a map, and they've kind of more or less stuck with that. They don't just like we're adding another secret continent that was invisible the whole time, unlike some stupid games. You know who you are. Wow. Where it's like yeah, giant land masses that have never been seen before. Ooh, it's like they don't do that. So and it falls into where it makes the most logical sense. There's lots of reasons why Hammerfell, High Rock has really like been kind of the focal point for quite a while. So yeah, this really does like it really does like fit in with that. But again, that could be a guess. And I mean at this point it's kind of like semi confirmed. So whatever, right? So potential guess or accurate judgment. There's a little bit here on the lore.
He says something rather interesting.
Fire.
Like he says, the twist is the landmass you see in the trailer is actually Yokuda, the archipelago remnants of the Redguard's homeland. That's an interesting detail. Like he goes into that's a bizarrely specific thing to say. So yeah, I don't know. Make it that what you will, but yeah. So it should be interesting to see that. High Rock hasn't really been explored since Daggerfall, he says here. All right, so he says sword singing and hunding won't be present, at least for the player character. Elder Scrolls 6 is striving to be a bit of a return to the roots for the RPG, and making the player character a sword summoning Jesus only limits their ability to be who they want. Okay.
This is where we start to get into he is potentially very accurate here. This is something that I've heard multiple points that that they're trying to return to roots of the RPG.
Okay.
That this game is going to be far more like Morrowind, and as far as like the RPG systems, than it will be of Skyrim. Skyrim was RPG super light. And the majority of the in-depth recreations for this are adding more RPG depth. And more RPG depth games have been doing better and better in the last decade. So, for the most part, I think this is they're hitting this on the head here. This is true from everything that I have heard, and from what a lot of other people have heard is that this is accurate. That they're trying to return to these roots. So yeah, again, something that wasn't necessarily in the public eye, but I can tell you has been whispered a lot, and we're going to get into this with their next game too. So
All right.
yeah.
Says here the main quest revolves mostly around the Dyreni Tower, aka the Adamantine Tower, which is still operative because the elves that want to unravel creation are still wanting to do that. And so they. So this is going to play a role in the plot. According to this, Hammerfell and High Rock tensions are heavy, though, which is a weakness the Thalmor are exploiting to the best of their ability. As you know, the title is Redfall, so a lot of that has to do with Hammerfell being threatened.
Yeah. Again, makes a lot of sense. Really does. It's been a plot point that lore hounds have been suggesting for a very long time, which doesn't make this post more accurate or less accurate. It just means that so either all of the lore hounds have been right, and or this person's creating a fake post knowing that the lore hounds are most likely right.
Right,
So,
okay.
yeah.
Procedural generation rumors are largely false. That's not how the company works today. Both Todd and Ashley are fans of the handcrafted method when it comes to game design. So, this is a long paragraph, so let's...
If Julian LaFay, I'll butt in here. If Julian LaFay were still here, maybe things would be different. The only thing that's actually being implemented is the quest system. So, procedural generation for maps. This was never a thing. This was every time that this rumor came up and somebody said, "Oh, I've heard a special thing that apparently Elder Scrolls 6 will feature a procedurally generated world, and every time you play the game, it'll be different." Complete bunk, complete bunk, complete bunk. Anytime that anybody came up with a quote-unquote leak about procedural generation as far as the map goes, you can write that off and say, nope, you're a bunch of idiots. It's not how any of their systems work, period.
Yeah.
There is no system that Bethesda has ever invested in to create that as a pinnacle force in any of their current IPs. Maybe in a new IP at some point, sure, but not in their current. No. So this being that, again, another point for potential accuracy is that big point there. Todd and Ashley absolutely have no intention, period, of having a procedurally generated world, 100%. And all of those rumors were bunk, and those of us who were in the know always knew that. So this huge point for success here, because a lot of people haven't really been mentioning this, because it's one of those things where it's like we test to know whether or not somebody's telling the truth, whether they or not they know that this is a thing. So the fact that they hit this on the head, sure.
Yeah. So he goes on here that the only way that any kind of procedural generation is being implemented is in quests. They're developing a system similar to Radiant quests, but on steroids, he says.
So this is another hit for him here, because this is something else that we have been paying attention to, learning and hearing. For those of us again in the know, this is we always knew that they were working on a new questing system that was basically like the Radiant quests, but on steroids. There has been a lot of people who have been commenting. One of the commenters that I was listening to this morning, they have this 100% wrong. A lot of people were like, "Ugh, more of these Radiant quests that were in Skyrim." It's like, oh, dude shows up and he's like, "Oh no, help me because of this," and then I encounter that same encounter for the next 50 times in the next 50 hours of gameplay, and it's totally sucks because I can see right through it.
It's going to be better than that. He says here, as time goes on, people run into problems and need help. Sometimes someone's child will get kidnapped, or a thief breaks in and steals a family heirloom. And apparently, this is so the difference between the Radiant AI of the Oblivion era and this is apparently that the difference being is that NPCs don't just devote their lives to acquiring as many calipers as possible and get themselves killed because they want they went around trying to steal them. NPCs have jobs, they earn a wage, and they spend that money how they please, be it a crazy night at the tavern, a gift for a friend or lover, a pet, new article of clothing. Some turn to a life of crime depending on their financial situation or their own morality. So it sounds like they're really juicing this up. And the NPCs...
So yes, and
Yeah.
again, this is where we know that this is what they've been working on for a long time, and that this was part of the tech problem that was mentioned years ago by Todd when he was talking about the new game. It's like they're waiting for technology that was not necessarily invented yet in order to get some of this stuff in. I can tell you for sure that this is accurate, 100%. The AI systems that they've been courting are literally next generation. They are far ahead thinkers. They're utilizing systems that other games have tried to or have attempted to, or other studios have said no to because they're afraid of what it could possibly mean for the future of their industry, because they're opening a genie box, basically. That's what this is. And this is why all those years ago when, this is why when people were asking, do you think Elder Scrolls 6 is even going to be good? I mean, the studio seems to be going down the crapper, and how can they possibly make a good game? You don't understand the technology that they're bringing to this new game.
Right.
We're going to see a little bit of it. We're going to see a lot of it in Starfield. But let me tell you, you have seen nothing. Nothing can prepare you for the new Radiant Quest systems that they're working on, the new AI system that they're working on. I've talked about Story Bricks before. This was an AI system that had been kind of like created a couple of years ago, almost 5-6 years ago now, that utilized a system that gave each and every single NPC in the game a desire, capabilities, and if they couldn't figure out how to do something, then they would try to learn to work around the situation. This is the technology that they're using here, and this is technology that most companies have. This makes certain companies, some companies, Activision being one of them, makes them crap their pants, because this is something that can, if they don't master this properly, this will steamroll them. This is why I said no. Elder Scrolls 6 is going to be good. Don't worry.
Right.
Because this is what they've learned, and this is what they've been focusing on, and this is what they wanted to have around, which is why we're not getting Elder Scrolls 6 next. We're getting Starfield next. And you're going to have a little bit of that stuff in there, but how it's going to be when it hits Skyrim again, or not Skyrim, Elder Scrolls 6 in a few years, it's getting there. And Funky Moin, this is part of the non-scripted technology that they're working. They're building in independent AI systems so that the AI can work together. And it's really, I mean, for some people it's scary, but for other people it's like this is the future of gaming. So this is something that it's like I'm winking heavily. This is an accurate bit of information that's found its way in here. We're still years away from seeing how this works, but trust me, somebody's got this person has a grasp of what they're working on, which is a big bonus in their direction. So yeah.
They're also looking at having a world with no loading screens, save for entering dungeons, player home, and fast traveling. Every city is to scale and doesn't require a loading screen to enter. That's cool.
This is also part of the tech that wasn't invented at the time.
Right, yeah.
They want this. They don't want Skyrim Whiterun anymore. They don't want you to walk up to a city, go to the main gate, go to a loading screen, walk into the place, go to another building, enter that building, go into another loading screen. They are done with that. And while it's still an issue for a lot of games, a lot of what they're working on, as far as 76, Fallout 4, maybe even a little bit of an issue when it comes to Starfield, by the time that Elder Scrolls 6 rolls around, they want this gone. They want this to be, they want massive cities that you don't have a loading screen, you just move around in them, and that was part of the tech that they were waiting on because they didn't want to build another Elder Scrolls game with still having that loading screen after loading screen after loading screen after loading screen.
Right, which is nice. I love this part here, though. The only reason the player home will have a loading screen is because we've seen how many of you like collecting gems, skulls, sweet rolls, and cabbages, etc. And we don't want those bringing down the frames in a town or city just because you decided to be weird.
Another really good point on this one, which kind of lends more credibility to this, because this is one of those things where it's like, yeah, you want to give the player home their own home feeling. And we know how much people love to do crazy home modding things. This is another thing where, again, it's like, this is something that I was expecting to hear. I had not heard this, but I was expecting it because, again, it logically makes sense. So yes, definite double yes on that.
Right.
So yeah.
All right, so there's a couple of points here about the spells and magic are being beefed up. There's a crafting system, which the poster claims to not know too much about, but we can apparently expect it to be similar to Fallout 4's in terms of modifying weapons, etc. Guilds and factions getting tuned up, made better, and because there's so many political themes, of vampire guilds will see the light of day for the first time since Morrowind. There's different kinds of vampires, each with different focuses, made for certain players, similar to the great houses of Morrowind. Some are focused on pure vampiric might and live to tear the there apart. Okay, some kind of a typo there.
English.
Anyway, so vampires coming. I mean, vampires are. The vampire guilds are returning. DLC hasn't been planned yet because it's usually based off ideas individuals have after the game is complete. And that's
very
not surprising.
typical of...
Yeah, especially since he's talking about expect a 2025 release date. Wow, that seems far away.
I have lost where you're at in this thing. I cannot.
I'm basically down at the end now.
Oh,
so
okay.
we can backtrack if there's anything else you wanted to.
We need to backtrack. So one of the big things that really makes this again stand out, that is very, 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 very accurate, is the magic. That magic is being altered and significantly changed, and they're not doing this as a cold shock. How basically it's like, oh, magic was like this in Skyrim, now it's completely different. You know, there's a lot of people who are going to say, excuse me, Mr. Redshirt over here, excuse me, I how is it that the basic fundamentals of magic have changed from this to this? I really don't understand. Do you have a response to this? In response to that guy, basically they've made this part of the quest, and they're giving the player, this is how the player is going to differentiate. This is how the player is going to be different than NPCs. So the normal NPC running around is going to have this very Skyrim-esque like magic, and it's going to have some improvements and some alterations, but then the player is going to be given access to this new magic, and the new magic is going to function like shouts did, because shouts in Skyrim gave you the ability to do a whole bunch of things that NPCs couldn't do. They need that system again to make your character feel like they're special, to give you a bunch of abilities that are not normal everyday abilities. And so that how they're addressing this is by opening up this world of new magic. Because the shouts, yes, time being 100%, the shouts were fun. The shouts 100% were fun, very cool, very enjoyable. But not every NPC could use it, or until they brought out the Dragonborn DLC. then suddenly it was like, oh, you're on equal footing. Oh, it's this great challenge of the fates, duel of the fates. Dun, 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 dun. That kind of whole thing going on, and you're like, oh wow, and that's really cool. This is the same kind of approach they're using here, and again, another reason why this like really like. I was kind of going through this. I'm like, yeah, right, good, yes, okay, more accurate. And then I got to this, and I was like, oh, he knows. He knows about the secret. Ah, interesting. So we kind of get into how like some of the light magic has been changed and tweaked and all this kind of stuff, but more convincingly was the fact that he knows about this whole like there's going to be this secondary magic system that's going to be introduced, and you're going to uncover and learn new ways to use magic, and that's going to become part and parcel with what your experience is going to be centered around when you're actually playing the game. So very interesting. This was where I was like, this literally like Doberman sitting down on the ground, and you take the little squeaky ball and you squeak it once, and he just goes from lying down like not caring about anything to like, oh, I'm ready to go. I was like, okay, yeah. Well, this got my attention very, very quickly. Yeah, so the crafting system, a bunch of stuff in here, very, very, very spot on. The guild system and the faction system, again, this is very interesting and fairly accurate. The Thieves Guild is going to be like basically a Robin Hood, so that's interesting. Yeah, uh, you got the Dark Brotherhood, sure, okay. The Thieves Guild, is more like Robin Hood, whereas the Dark Brotherhood is more like the assassinate people. So this is going to be really interesting, and I like the two tie-ins. Again, this is where the guesswork can come in. So this might totally be good guesswork right here, because this is very, very, very kind of like logical of having those two differences. And then yeah, vampire themes and vampire guilds, interesting.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds really cool, but yeah, 2025. That just feels like
Not unreasonable.
it's not unreasonable, but man, that seems like a long time away.
I think that there's a good chance that we might get this by 2024, but 2025 is completely accurate as well.
Yeah.
So
Well, I mean,
basically,
a lot can change
basically
between now and then.
yeah, we're gonna see Starfield most likely this year, or probably like late this fall, November-ish, which really kind of makes it like a 2021 release, and then that's like 3 to 3.5 years later, we get this. I suspect it's either going to be a fall 2024 release or a spring 2025 release for Elder Scrolls. That way, by that time, the MMO will have mostly run its course. They've got like another 2 expansions left to really plan out, and unless there's some like great rallying to the MMO, I really don't think that they're going to really drag it off past that very much. I think this is how ZeniMax and Bethesda planned this. They were like, all right, the MMO is doing great. We're going to keep that going until 2023. Then we're going to really ramp up the whole, thing about this game. 2024, 2025, new Elder Scrolls game comes out. After like 2 years of DLC following up that title, we will then release the brand new Elder Scrolls Online. I think that's what they're going for, and I think that's the plan. It makes logical sense. It's what I would do if I was in their shoes. I'd be like, we don't want to release Elder Scrolls 6 and an Elder Scrolls MMO at the same time. Preferably, we want people to be playing Elder Scrolls 6 for like 3 years straight, or like have the hype, the release, then the expansions, the DLC, and then just as they're coming off of that high, put them right back into the brand new Elder Scrolls MMO. That's exactly what we're looking at. So again, really, 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 really makes sense.
All right.
Yeah.
Poster does end the post with some info about Starfield. Again, this is rumors and speculation time, but I mean, there's this poster does have a lot of the earmarks of potentially being very accurate, but here's the Starfield info that's coming out of this. This one I really don't want to spoil too much about, he says, because man oh man, Todd, Ashley, Emil, and even Pete are bursting with excitement about it. This is largely Todd's baby, as he's the one who really started bringing it up and shooting the idea out there. Everyone slowly fell in love with it, etc., etc., etc. Anyway, so he says, I'm not going to say too much, but I will say this. There are multiple alien species you get to meet and interact with. The quests are incredibly interesting and subvert your expectations in unique and interesting ways. Few of them are go to X, kill Y, bring back Z, and even fewer of them are exactly what they are supposed to be initially. Most of the time, you run into complications, and you'll gain new knowledge on the matter presented with a choice. Sounds good. That does sound fairly standard, but
Yeah,
it
again,
sounds
this
good.
is like good guesswork. Like, yeah, the multiple alien species. That's again, it's one of these things that a lot of us kind of have been hearing rumors about, that there's going to be multiple alien species, and that we're going to see Todd's take on alien species. We know that their system is very robust for having multiple species. I mean, you're talking about a game where you can play as an Argonian or a Khajiit. This is not something that some games are willing to do. I mean, we were just talking about how some games, they make one single frame system, more body morph system, and then it's the same character for basically everybody. So this is going outside the realm of like normal, what most companies do, because it's the safe thing to do. So yeah, it's like a minor. It's like it doesn't convince me that he knows what he's talking about on this, but it does make me go, yeah, okay,
Yeah, fair enough.
good guesswork.
The RPG mechanics will make you feel like your build really matters, apparently.
Yeah, this is the Doberman moment for me on this one. Was I was like, first two things was like, meh, whatever. Got to this one and I was like, dang, he knows the secret. So this has been the secret again. They're really going back to the RPG mechanics, because the art the light RPG thing is a thing of the past. They realize that people like customization. They like unique stuff. They like the ability to kind of create and tweak their own character, and they want to feel that their build matters. And this is something that again we've heard on the whispers. I've had tons of little birds tell me this over the past couple of months and years, especially pertaining to this. Um, you know, and the fact that Bethesda hasn't done this well. Fallout 3, Fallout 4, Skyrim, they all became less of an RPG than what their forebears were. What their previous incarnations was RPG medium to heavy, and I mean Skyrim was RPG uber light. Fallout 4 was uber light, uber light, versus Fallout 3, where it was light-ish, medium to light-ish. So again, when we heard this, I've been hearing this for a while, that they've been meaning to return to more of an RPG centric system, because it's what makes you fall in love with your character, as well as the storytelling. The whole "you're on a quest to save the universe," that's been done to death. We don't care about the universe anymore. What we care about is whether or not we get to bang the blue alien or not, and if we can make it all the way through her various difficult dialogue choices to try and get that to happen. We don't really care about saving the universe. We've saved the universe countless times. What we want is an NPC and a character that actually means something to us personally, and experiences with other NPCs and characters that match that experience. So yeah.
I agree, although banging the blue alien by picking the right dialogue choices is my absolute least favorite kind of quest in any game ever. But I see what you're
Well,
saying, though.
yeah.
All right. Finally, he says the playtime per playthrough will be somewhere between 70 to 120 hours if you do everything that's available to you in the game. So there you go.
Another really good hint here with this. We have been hearing that they were aiming for this. Again, this is one of these things that you don't know the 70 to 120 hours unless you're in on the know. So that's again the final little thing where it's like, okay, okay, it, okay, all right. No, this kind of makes sense. So again, there's a lot of guesswork. If I wanted to, I could have created something that had almost all of this information, um, just from just from things that I have heard uh, reasonably well in by being in the know. As far as like access to additional like super secret information, that's really where you kind of get the plot line here that he outlined here at the beginning of the post, pertaining to Redguard's homeland, the Hammerfall, and the Adamantine Tower. This is all stuff that it makes, that's where again it's like lore hounds have been speculating about this stuff, but the fact that he's calling this out by name and really putting it out there that is the main storyline of the thing, um, that makes a lot of sense. We're not expecting any dialogue because again, I really don't think they're that far ahead. They're still 5 years away from this. They've been working on like the tech and the graphics. I mean, they got Grandma Shirley in for a scan. They've been doing a whole bunch of other stuff. They're working on early tech for this, and they are slowly starting to wrap up their work on Starfield. Um, so this is going to be really interesting. Very, 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 very
Yes.
interesting.
And he ends the post here saying there's going to be a nice teaser before E3 about Starfield. So we'll see if that comes to fruition. All right. So very interesting overall. I mean, if all of this comes to pass, then it should be really good. And I understand, there is some concern and some skepticism about Bethesda Game Studios. But as Saib said, let's see what they do. And I mean,
Yeah.
if they go in a really bad direction with it, then of course we will.
You have to, the thing with Bethesda, you have to remember that there are multiple studios working on multiple things, and these studios are spread around throughout the United States. When I hear about games, certain locations, I know that I preemptively roll my eyes because I know what those studios, what their culture creates, and it's a lot of the stuff that their bosses want them to create for money. And so there's a lot of places where if there's a studio working on a game and it's coming out of California, I know that it's going to be a lot of hypocrisy. It's going to be a lot of West Coast snobbery, and that there's going to be basically an enormous amount of microtransactions. Um, and I'm doing that because California is a really big place, and you can kind of say that about a lot of companies there. There are other locations, kind of you roll your eyes, right? Then there's other locations around the globe where it's like, no, these people, they're working on it because not because it's the in hip thing to do. They're working on it because they love this stuff. We've been talking with, again, another developer. Don't want to spoil anything. We're working with them on some tentative projects. Hopefully, will come to fruition this year, and it's really exciting. But again, these are not people that have tons and tons and tons of money to throw around at stuff. This is a company that is being formed out of small teams, labor of love, that kind of stuff. And this is where I think we're going to see success, and we're going to see tremendous success with this stuff. Yeah, David, we talked about GeForce earlier in the podcast, and yeah, like all the people pulling out of it. But yeah, just with Bethesda, it's like I think any project that's being directly worked on by Todd is going to have a level of quality that is not going to compare to something that's being worked on by a new studio that has been bought out or has recently transitioned to working on something like 76. Like they just don't have the experience. They just don't have the manpower. They just don't have the professionalism, because they're still kind of new. And that's the studio that's been working on 76. It's not their core studio. It's one of their smaller, like recently taken over studios, and they're following a big boss who calls in once a month and says, "Yeah, find me a way to get more microtransactions in there, because I love microtransactions. Get more microtransactions in. Buddy at the club said that he just made $1.5 billion on a microtransaction game. I want that stuff. I want it now." Hangs up. That's who they're dealing with over at that studio. And because they can't say no, they create kind of garbagey titles.
Right.
So.
All right. And with that, we're going to wrap up the show today. So thank you so much, everybody, for watching and listening. Thank you for the great conversation in the chat. Thank you for supporting the show by listening live or after the fact. Don't forget to slam that like button before you leave. Really appreciate that. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, leave comments below if you're listening to the pre-recorded version. All of that really helps us out a lot. Special thank you to our Patreon supporters and channel members who help make this content possible. Our big damn heroes on Patreon, Josh, Robin, Timebean, and our 2 anonymous supporters there. Our channel members on YouTube, Mr. Pazdzernik, Jer Schultz, Game Notes, Night City Punk, and Terror K. If you're listening after the fact on SoundCloud, iTunes, Spotify, or any of the other platforms this podcast goes out to, we appreciate your interactions there as well. And don't forget, you can join the live show on YouTube Wednesday nights and Saturday mornings. That's North America time. It's more like the afternoon on Wednesday. But anyway, where you can interact with us and other listeners and be part of the discussion. If you want to see the exact time and schedule, join our Discord server. And join up for a great conversation there as well. The Augmented Reality Podcast is a presentation of the Triple S League. Check out our YouTube channel for game guides, reviews, comedy, news updates, and tons more quality gaming content. My name is Ash, and on behalf of Subsidian, thank you all so much for listening. We'll talk to you again very soon.